Hello, Brubs. We're back with new book arrivals, number 262 or 3, one of the two. And we're going to start with this, Anne Rice violin audiobooks on CD. Who read it? Says it on there, but I can't read what it says. Because it's blocked by something. Fuck read these. See if I can't see it through there. No, it's got it on the sticker right on there. Read by something. Read by Mari. Yeah, everything that tells you who it's read by. Anyway, I'll be see those two puzzles over there on the floor. I'll be listening to that while I'm doing the puzzles. These two giant 3D fairy tale books are actually worth some money. Not a lot, but 10 to 15 bucks. You can't really see the 3D function for whatever reason. But trust me when I say that the covers have 3D, you might be able to see it. Let me see if I turn off that if it does anything. You can't really see the 3D apparatus that's at play here, but I assure you there's a 3D mechanism built into these, but only on the cover. But these books are generally worth 10 to 15 bucks. They're Japanese productions, and they're basically board books, but with claymation. I mean, look at this. Weird shit. Weird stuff. I will probably read these at some point on the channel since they're probably a 5-minute read. But yeah, like I said, you can't see the 3D action going on there, but it's there, trust me. Playmore. Are they called Playmore? Yes, Playmore. Playmore. And let me get this fucking channel going here. Look Away. A History of the Confederate States of America by William C. Davis, author of An Honorable Defeat, The Last Days of the Confederate Government. Some people hate the Confederacy, but that's their problem. I don't dislike it or like it. I do believe that the Confederacy was both wrong in allowing slavery, but right in the fact that they wanted to secede from the Union and had the right to do so. Some people don't agree with that sentiment, but you can agree with anything you'd like. The book that goes along with that, Jefferson Davis, Private Letters, 1823 to 1889. Can't say I really know anything about Jefferson Davis, to be honest. So maybe I'll read his letters on here, and we can learn a little about the man himself. A lot of articles that deride Jefferson Davis called him Jeff. I'm not sure why, but it seemingly was the hit on him that he was Jeff. Just Jeff. I don't know if that's to delineate between Jefferson Davis and Thomas Jefferson, but I don't even know if there's a connection between those two names. But yeah. All right. Mu Duk Kwan, Taekwondo, Korean Art of Self-Defense by Richard Chun, Volume 1. Whoa. Self-defense techniques. I bought this to resell. It's probably worth 10, 15 bucks. Oh, look, an old Hudson's. Receipts in there that I put from another book, 1993. Literary notes. Very cool. Vintage mass market paperback of Hello, Jesse. Hi, Bench Warmers Nation. me see. Why do I not see this on my screen, bruv? Or do I? Oh, it's there. What's up? The House of the Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne, complete and unabridged. It is a 1963 Airmont Publishing Company. I just like the cover. I have probably 5 or 6 copies of The House of Seven Gables. I try not to get the same edition all the time. Never read the book, probably should. Look at that hair. That's a fucking brilliant hairdo. Hello, Bobs. C.S. Lewis, Out of a Silent Planet. Previously owned by Janine Silverman. What the hell is this? Just a note place. Never read C.S. Lewis. I've seen the movie, though. If that counts for anything. I mean, not into sci-fi, so there's no reason for me to read C.S. Lewis's fiction, and I'm not into religion, so there's not any reason to pick up or read it. I've got about 50 C.S. Lewis books and biographies, but maybe not 50, maybe 25, but there's no real reason to pick that up. I picked this up because it's worth about $10 to sad sack fuckers who need to read letters to Playboy, or what's it called? Penthouse magazine. Recently, I was staying at a motel for several days while attending a series of business meetings. After a late dinner one evening, I was returning to my room and noticed that the drapes were partly open. A guy was lying naked on the bed. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So, but these books, I always pick them up when I see them because they're worth $10 to $15. And there's always some desperate bastard who will buy them on eBay. So, turn 50 cents into $10. Pick up a copy of Letters to Penthouse anytime you see it. This book I bought for $2, obviously. Almost an antique copy of The Triumph of an Idea by Ralph H. Graves. The story of Henry Ford. Since I'm from Michigan, Henry Ford has relevance to the local area here. There he is. Ugly bastard. Where the first Ford car was built. On Bagley Avenue, Detroit, now in the historical village of Dearborn. You got to give Ford some credit. He did rebuild a lot of stuff. He turned places like Nankin Mills into a factory, and he did a bunch of other little buildings like this where he provided jobs for people. He also rebuilt the city of Inkster, which was basically the local suburb populated with the most black people outside of Detroit who came up from the south. He rebuilt that whole city, which was basically a shanty town. And in return, I think he even mortgaged houses and stuff to these, built and mortgaged houses to his black workers, but they had to pay him back. He just took a cut out of each one of their checks until it was paid off. He also had a store where they could buy goods at cheaper rates. I believe most of this was during the Great Depression, but I could be wrong. So Ford was a complex dude, supposedly a hero of Hitler and an early supporter, but people tend to ignore that fact. Wilmington's Lie, The Murderous Coup of 1898 and the Rise of White Supremacy by David Zacchino. I already have a copy of this book, but I think it's hardcover. I don't know what the hell happened to this. Looks like it sat in the box wrong. I've never heard of this story until I bought the book a couple months ago, and now I found it again. By 1898, Wilmington, North Carolina was a shining example of a mixed-race community. But across the South, white supremacist Democrats, notice that, were working to reverse the advances made by black citizens. In North Carolina, they devised a coordinated campaign of intimidation and violence that culminated in Wilmington on November 10th, 1898, when 2,000 heavily armed white night riders swarmed through the city, forcing city officials and leading black citizens to flee at gunpoint, terrorizing women and children, and shooting at least 60 black men dead in the streets. That's your Democrats. This brutal insurrection halted gains made by blacks in Wilmington and restored racism as official government policy, cementing white rule for another 70 years. Pinocchio by C. How do you say that name? Collodi. Hello, Bobs. I know I already said that, but book's a little rough. Look at this. He's meeting the cat and the fox. Look at that cat. I didn't know Pinocchio met a cat. Look at the cat. Look at him like, who's this fucking guy? M.A. Donahue and Co. Paid $3 for this at a local library. Figured it was worth it. You couldn't get a copy of this online for that price and shipping alone. So even if it's only worth $10, it's still paid for the shipping cost alone. I don't really know shit about Pinocchio except from what I've seen in the Disney cartoon thing, but obvious rubbish. Still a collectible. Nice cover, even though the pages are kind of falling out. Here's an interesting volume. Sex and Race, this is volume 3, Why White and Black Mix in Spite of Opposition by J.A. Rogers, author from Superman to Man, etc. What year is this? Helga M. Rogers, 5th edition, 1972, originally published in 44. Remarks on the first 2 volumes of Sex and Race, the Why and Wherefore of Volume 3, Mixed Marriages as Seen by the Law, Ancient and Early Historic. The classic example of this sort, however, is Mary Preston, a Southern white woman whose readings on Shakespeare were popular in her day. Miss Preston twisted Othello to suit herself while admitting that Shakespeare did make Othello black. That was positively not what Shakespeare meant, so far as she was concerned. She said, italics hers, in studying the play Othello, I have always imagined its hero a white man. It is true the dramatist paints him black, but this shade does not suit the man. Obviously, I think this book is a study on mixed marriages, obviously, when it wasn't a thing, a popular thing. And there's nudity that you probably want to see because you're weirdos, but this book is worth some money. Race mixing in Russia. Wait, they had black people in Russia? That's news to me. Professor Boris Tits. What an unfortunate name. Boris Tits, Moscow Conservatory of Music, and his American his wife was not Russian. She was a black white woman. Coretti Tits. I mean, that's an unfortunate name. Mr. Tits. Maybe I'll read this book on the channel. Upper left to right, Baron de Cotejeep. What's this say? What are the white man's lands? Appendix to volume Twilight of the Rights. Some very, very neat underlining there. I was hoping to find all 3 volumes because the books are worth $20-$30 a piece. I got it for $1. Obviously, there weren't many, as I was saying earlier, many mixed race marriages, at least not in the U.S. at that time. I don't even know if it was legal. But this is an updated version from the 70s, so I still don't think there were many interracial marriages at that time either, or at least between black and white. I don't know about other races. Was it illegal for other races to marry back in the day in America? I mean, it wasn't illegal because marriage is not a institution of the state to begin with, and people who made it as such are basically skirting the law. I mean, it's a legal contract, but it's not the government's choice to referee that law or lack thereof. Rudy Ansbacher, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Elizabeth Ansbacher as well. To all those who attended the lay education class on the New Age and the Church. 2 small groups will be meeting at 10:30 a.m. following worship. Brown Kennards, blah, 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 Christian theology. Anyways, this is philosophical essays on Freud. Obviously way outdated info, but to my way of thinking, the old books were obviously the stepping stone to what has come now, and I doubt there's much. Did I see Wittgenstein? There it is. Conversations on Freud, Ludwig Wittgenstein, from 1932 to 1933 lectures. What year is this? 84? Looks like a 60s volume, but apparently not. Perfume by Patrick Susskind. The Story of a Murder. This is a novel. I did a reading of the first 2 chapters and a live broadcast. I've heard about this book somehow through, what's his name? Kurt Cobain, I think. I don't know. I randomly came across a video of Kurt Cobain talking about this book, or somebody mentioned it, and then I watched the video. But he said it was one of his favorite books, and he read it all the time. And on those grounds alone, I expected it to be awful. But I read the first 2 chapters on this channel somewhere. I think it was yesterday I read them, and it was rather interesting actually, which was shocking to me, both because I don't like fiction, and also because Kurt Cobain was not exactly a literary luminary. But apparently, this book's got some merit. Ravensbrück, Life and Death in Hitler's Concentration Camp for Women. I assume, I don't really know anything about it, but having read the Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn, which was a book on the gulags in Russia, I have to imagine that being a woman in a gulag probably merited some privileges for favors. Although I don't really know much about German concentration camps. But I'm sure that there was a similar mechanism going on where a hot chick got advantages by giving things to prison guards, but I don't know if that's what this entails at all. The report goes on with a warning to criminals for the fate of the women in the concentration camp of Ravensbrück. All Germans are responsible, SS officers and doctors of the administration of the camp. Prime responsibility, therefore, could just look up prostitutes, camp brothels. Yeah, anytime there's any kind of a concentration camp, there's always like dudes giving favors to women. Obviously, they're probably hot women, so sick bastards hate them, but then they get sex from them. So can't understand the aesthetic, but there you go. Can't understand this guy's aesthetic either. Never was into Hitchens. Just seemed like a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian, but I don't know. The guy was kind of boring to me. But I still have about 5 or 6 of his books. question you ask, what to read and whom to study, is one that I receive quite often. It ought to be an easy inquiry to answer, but it isn't, and this is for a series of reasons. The first and most obvious is that you should not look for arguments from authority. You must have noticed that I make liberal use of extracts and quotations, not just to show off my reading, but also to lighten my text and make use of those who can express my thoughts better than I am able to. So I am not immune from the weakness against which I am counseling you. I do have some sources of inspiration to which I recur, but it would not always be clear why they have come to mean what they do to me. Then there is the question of mood. Oh my God, this guy's a bore. The Real Trial of Oscar Wilde, the first uncensored transcript of the trial of Oscar Wilde versus John Douglas Marquess of Queensberry. Isn't this a trial on his solicitous works? Oh, he called him a homosexual. A libel action brought against the Marquess, is that how you say Marquess of Queensberry for publicly calling him a homosexual. What unfolded in the court was one of Victorian London's most infamous scandals. The great... Why the fuck is this on? Turn you off, bruv. Let me say one word, sir. I venture to say that when the circumstances of this case are more fully known, you will find that Lord Queensberry acted as he did under feelings of great indignation and, magistrate interrupting, I cannot go into that now. Sir George Lewis, I do not wish this case to be adjourned without it being known that there is nothing against the honor of Lord Queensberry. Magistrate, you mean to say that you have a perfect answer to the charge? Sir George Lewis, I ask you, sir, to allow his lordship to be at large on his entering into his own recognizance in the sum of £1,000. I should like to have a surety. Lord Queensberry is not going to run away. Anyway, I don't know what happens in there. Maybe I'll read it one day. Nietzsche, Biology and Metaphor by Gregory Moore. Not sure why and this is quite written up, marked up, why the Value World thrift stores suddenly have a glut of Nietzsche books, but I found 3 or 4 of them at least at them, so I'm grateful for it. Obviously not his works, but explication on his works. At the salt mines in Salzburg, they throw a leafless wintry bough into one of the abandoned workings. 2 or 3 months later, they pull it out covered with a shining deposit of crystals. The smallest twig, no bigger than a tom tit's. That was a tom tit's claw, is studded with a galaxy of scintillating diamonds. The original branch is no longer recognizable. Sounds like something Nietzsche wrote. All right, we got 5 books left. Ernest Hemingway, the short stories. I'm sure I already have a copy of this, but look at that. But for 25 cents, which I think I picked it up for, well worth it. I've only read about 3 or 4 Hemingway novels. None of his short work, so I can't really say what they're about. I'm sure they go in the same vein, but I do not know. Ward Number 6 and Other Stories by Anton Chekhov. Obviously a compilation. The World of Chekhov Introduction. Ward Number 6 and Other Stories. Inspired by Chekhov's stories, comments, and questions for further reading. Transformations by Anne Sexton, winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. What year does it say? It doesn't say. With a preface by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. Inside many of us is a small old man who wants to get out, no bigger than a 2-year-old whom you'd call Lamb Chop. Yet this one is old and malformed. His head is okay, but the rest of him wasn't Sanforized. He is a monster of despair. He is all decay. He speaks up, as tiny as an airphone with Truman's asexual voice. I am your dwarf. I am the enemy within. I am the boss of your dreams. No, I am not the law in your mind, the grandfather of watchfulness. I am the law of your members, the kindred of blackness and impulse. See, your hand shakes. It is not palsy or booze. It is your doppelganger. Trying to get out. Beware, beware. I always thought that this woman, Anne Sexton, a huge whore, was nothing but a poor man's Sylvia Plath, an idiot's poor man's Plath. Poor man's Plath? Yeah. An idiot poor man's Plath. The Black Death, Philip Ziegler. I picked up a copy of this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it was in rather ragged shape. So I picked up another copy. Nothing's can cheer you up like a little black plague. A series of natural disasters in the Orient during the 14th century brought about the most devastating period of death and destruction in European history. The epidemic killed 1/3 of Europe's people over a period of 3 years, and the resulting social and economic upheaval was on a scale unparalleled. Do all plagues and such occur or start in Asia? What's up with that? Or is that a generalization? Considering that the worst plague started in Asia, I guess that, and then supposedly COVID, which I won't get into that, started there too. What do you think? Lives like loaded guns. Emily Dickinson and her family's feuds. I read somewhere about family feuds recently, but I don't know where it was. And I think it was a book that I bought or something. But anyway, picked this book up for 95 cents yesterday at the same store. I got the Nietzsche book. Rather tanned copy, but always interesting to read about a poet's life. Dickinson was one of the more interesting women poets, which is saying a lot because there aren't many interesting women poets. Wasn't it her brother? I can't remember what the feuds were about. Didn't they accuse somebody of murder or something? I don't know. Anyway, that's all.